My name is Rachel Carter. I'm 29 years old and I live in Dallas, Texas. For most of my life, I believed in the simple math of hard work. You put in the hours, you make the sacrifices, and eventually you get the reward. My reward was supposed to be a small house with a porch swing and a garden. A quiet place that was finally mine. I had saved over $60,000 for it. It was my entire future sitting in a single bank account. Then one morning I logged in to check my balance, and it was gone. All of it. My parents had taken every last cent to pay for my brother's mistakes. They thought I would just take it. They thought I would stay silent and start over. They were wrong. But before I tell you how everything flipped, like and subscribe, and drop a comment to let me know where you're watching from. Growing up, our house was a tilted floor. Everything always seemed to slide in my brother Ethan's direction. He was the golden child, the one my parents, Martin and Susan Carter, pinned all their hopes on. He was 3 years older than me, charming, and utterly reckless. I was the quiet one, the responsible one, the safety net. I remember my 10th birthday. I had asked for a telescope. I was obsessed with the stars, and I spent hours reading library books about constellations. I imagined setting it up in the backyard, mapping the night sky. Instead, I got a practical set of encyclopedias. "Knowledge is the best gift, Rachel," my father said, patting the stiff cover. That same year, for Ethan's 13th birthday, he wanted a brand new dirt bike. It was expensive, way beyond our family's budget. My parents took out a small loan to get it for him. "He needs an outlet for his energy," my mother explained, her eyes shining as she watched him race down the street kicking up dust. I watched from my bedroom window, the encyclopedias sitting untouched on my desk. That was the pattern. When Ethan crashed his first car at 17, my father spent a weekend fixing the dents and told the neighbors Ethan had swerved to avoid a dog. When I got a B+ in chemistry, I was grounded for a month for not trying hard enough. My successes were expected. My failures were unforgivable. Ethan's successes were celebrated like national holidays. His failures were everyone else's problem to solve. He floated through life on a cloud of my parents' money and excuses. He dropped out of community college after a semester because it stifled his creativity. Then came the string of brilliant business ideas. There was the gourmet food truck that never sold a single taco because he spent the startup money on chrome rims and a sound system. Then there was the app he designed to help people trade rare sneakers, which ended with him in debt to some very angry collectors. Each time, he'd come home, head hanging low, with a story about being cheated or misunderstood. And each time, my parents would open their checkbook. "He just has bad luck," my mother would whisper, as if saying it quietly would make it true. "He has a good heart." While Ethan was having bad luck, I was working. I started at a local diner when I was 18, the day after I graduated high school. I used the money to pay for my prerequisite classes at the same community college Ethan had abandoned. The smell of stale coffee and grease clung to my clothes. But every dollar I earned felt real. It felt like mine. I went on to nursing school, juggling clinicals with 12-hour waitressing shifts on the weekends. I packed my own lunches. I bought my clothes from thrift stores. I didn't take vacations. My life was a series of small, calculated sacrifices. My dream was simple: a house, not a mansion, just a small, 2-bedroom home in a quiet Dallas suburb. A place where the floor was level. A place where I could hang a porch swing and drink my morning coffee in peace. A place that Ethan couldn't touch. That dream kept me going through the long nights studying and the even longer shifts on my feet. The savings account was my secret escape plan. I opened it when I was 16, with money from a summer job, and my parents had to co-sign. It became my obsession. Every spare dollar went into it. I watched the balance grow, slowly at first, then faster as I started my nursing career. $10,000, $25,000, $50,000. Finally, 2 weeks ago, I had deposited a bonus from work, pushing the total to just over $62,000. It was the proudest moment of my life. I had done it, all by myself. I was so close. I never thought to take my parents' names off the account. It was a relic of my childhood, a technicality. They knew that money was sacred. It was my house fund, my future. I had told them about it, shown them pictures of listings, shared my dream with them. They had smiled and nodded. "That's nice, honey," my mother had said, before immediately changing the subject to Ethan's latest drama. I thought their lack of interest was just how they were. I never imagined it was something more sinister. I trusted them. That was my biggest mistake. It was a Friday morning. I was sitting at my small kitchen table, sipping coffee before a shift at the hospital. It was a rare, quiet moment. I decided to check my bank account. Not because of worry, but because of pride. I loved seeing that number. It was a tangible symbol of my discipline. I opened the app on my phone, entered my passcode, and waited for the screen to load. Balance, $423.17. I blinked. I refreshed the page. The number didn't change. $423.17. It felt like a typo, a glitch in the system. My heart started to beat a frantic rhythm against my ribs. I scrolled down to the transaction history. My hands were shaking so hard I could barely hold the phone. And there it was. A single, massive transaction from 3 days prior, a wire transfer, for $62,000. Destination, an account I didn't recognize. Authorization, Martin Carter, my father. The coffee cup slipped from my hand and shattered on the floor. I didn't even flinch. A cold wave washed over me, a chilling numbness that started in my stomach and spread through my entire body. This couldn't be real. It was a mistake. There had to be an explanation. I called the bank, my voice a strained whisper. The customer service representative was polite, patient, but her words were like stones hitting a window pane, cracking my reality. "Yes, Miss Carter, I see the transfer here," she said calmly. "It was authorized by one of the joint account holders, a Mr. Martin Carter." "But he can't do that," I said, my voice rising with panic. "That's my money. I earned all of it." "I understand your frustration, ma'am," her tone shifted to one of practiced sympathy. "But as a joint account holder, he has full legal access to the funds. There was nothing to flag. The transfer is legitimate." Legitimate. The word echoed in my ears. He had the legal right, but he had no moral right. He had stolen my future. The representative kept talking, explaining policies and procedures, but I couldn't hear her anymore. I hung up the phone. The silence in my apartment was deafening. The shattered cup on the floor seemed to mock me. My trust, my security, my dream, all broken in an instant, all for him. I knew, with a certainty that made me sick, that this had everything to do with Ethan. That evening, I drove to my parents' house. The entire way, I rehearsed what I would say. I imagined myself being calm, articulate, demanding an explanation. But underneath the planned speeches, a raw, primal anger was simmering. The house looked the same as always, a modest brick home with a well-kept lawn, a picture of suburban normalcy. But when I walked through the door, it felt like a crime scene. They were in the dining room. My father, Martin, was reading the newspaper. My mother, Susan, was setting the table for dinner. And Ethan was there, sitting at the head of the table like a king, scrolling through his phone with a smirk on his face. He didn't even look up when I came in. The scene was so painfully normal, it made my rage boil over. "Where is it?" I asked. My voice didn't sound like my own. It was cold and hard. My mother stopped placing the forks. She wouldn't meet my eyes. "Rachel, what a surprise. I was just about to call you for dinner." Don't pretend like nothing happened. Where is my money?" My father slowly folded his newspaper and placed it on the table. He looked at me not with guilt, but with weary annoyance, as if I were a toddler throwing a tantrum. "Rachel, lower your voice. We need to talk about this like adults." "Adults? You stole $62,000 from my bank account and you want to talk about it like adults? Where is my money?" Ethan finally looked up from his phone, a smirk playing on his lips. "Calm down, sis. It's just money." Something inside me broke. Just money? It was my house. It was my life. It was 10 years of working double shifts while you were out blowing through every cent you could get your hands on. "We had no choice," my father said, firm, defensive. Ethan was in trouble. Real trouble. Some of his business partners, they were threatening to sue. It was either your savings or we declare bankruptcy and lose this house. The excuse was so practiced, so hollow. They were protecting him, as always, protecting the family name, and I was the price. My voice shook with a fury I had never felt before. That was my money for a house, my future, my one chance to have something for myself, and you just took it? You just handed it over to him? My mother finally spoke, her voice sharp and brittle. You're young, Rachel. You'll earn it back. Your brother needs stability right now. Family is supposed to help each other. Someday, when he's successful, he'll take care of you too. The absurdity of her words hit me like a physical blow. Take care of me? Ethan had never taken care of anyone but himself. In that moment, looking at their faces, my father's stern justification, my mother's pleading delusion, and Ethan's entitled smirk, I saw the truth with blinding clarity. I wasn't their daughter. I was a resource. I was Ethan's emergency fund, his human safety net. My dreams were disposable. My sacrifices were meaningless. My entire life had been a contribution to the cult of Ethan, and I hadn't even realized I was a member. I looked at Ethan. Did you even ask them not to? He shrugged, leaning back in his chair. They offered. What was I supposed to do? It's not my fault that you're a workaholic who doesn't know how to enjoy life. I stared at him, at the three of them, a united front against me. There was no apology, no remorse, just the solid, unshakable belief that they had done the right thing. I felt like a stranger in my own family. I turned and walked out the door without another word. The sound of my mother calling my name followed me, but I didn't stop. I couldn't. There was nothing left to say. The days that followed were a blur of numb disbelief and sharp, stabbing pain. I went to work. I took care of my patients. I smiled and charted and followed protocols. But inside, I was hollowed out. The betrayal was a constant, physical ache in my chest. Then, it got worse. A week after the confrontation, a friend sent me a screenshot. It was from Ethan's Instagram. There he was, grinning, leaning against a brand new, shiny black sports car. The caption read, "New beginnings. Big things are coming. So grateful for my family who always believes in me and supports my vision. Hashtag fresh start. Hashtag family loyalty. Hashtag hustle." I stared at the picture, my blood turning to ice. My house money, my 10 years of sacrifice, it wasn't just gone, it was being flaunted. He had used a chunk of my life savings to buy a ridiculous, flashy car. I clicked through the rest of his posts. There were pictures of him at expensive restaurants, clinking glasses with strangers. A shot of a plane ticket to Las Vegas. He wasn't paying off life or death debts. He was living it up. He was celebrating his heist. The comments under the photos were like tiny daggers. "Wow, congrats, man. Your family is the best." An aunt had even commented, "So proud of you, Ethan. Your hard work is paying off." His hard work? The irony was so bitter it made me want to scream. The humiliation was a suffocating blanket. My phone started buzzing. Friends who knew about my house fund were calling, texting, "Hey, did you help Ethan get that new car? That's so generous of you. I saw Ethan's post. Is everything okay?" Each message was a fresh wound. They thought I was a willing participant in my own destruction. They saw me as a generous sister, a loving daughter. They didn't see the truth. I was a victim, a fool who had trusted the wrong people. I started ignoring the calls and texts. I couldn't explain the truth without sounding like I was crazy or bitter. How do you tell people that your own parents stole from you for your deadbeat brother? It sounded like something from a trashy daytime TV show, not my actual life. The public performance of it all was what broke me. They hadn't just taken my money, they had stolen my story, recasting me as the supportive sister in their twisted family drama. They were erasing my pain, my work, my dream, and replacing it with Ethan's triumphant comeback story paid for by me. The lie was so complete, so audacious, that I felt like I was losing my mind. The world saw a loyal family. I knew it was a conspiracy. I stopped answering my family's calls. My mother left tearful voicemails begging me to stop being so dramatic and come home so we can be a family again. My father sent curt texts. "This is childish, Rachel. We expect you at Sunday dinner." Ethan didn't contact me at all. Why would he? He had everything he wanted. I threw myself into work, picking up every extra shift I could. The hospital became my refuge. The controlled chaos of the emergency room was a welcome distraction from the chaos in my head. The physical exhaustion was a relief. It was honest. If I worked a 12-hour shift, I was tired. It was a simple, understandable equation, unlike the twisted logic of my family. For a few weeks, it worked. I was too tired to think, too busy to feel. But the quiet moments were brutal. Driving home from the hospital in the dead of night, the image of Ethan's smiling face next to that car would flash in my mind. Lying in bed, staring at the ceiling of my small apartment, I'd calculate the hours I had worked, the holidays I had missed, the simple pleasures I had denied myself. All of it funneled directly into his flashy, empty life. One night, after a particularly grueling shift where we lost a patient, I came home completely drained. The apartment was cold and silent. I opened my laptop, intending to look at job postings in another city, another state, anywhere but here. But my fingers moved on their own, typing in Ethan's name on social media. There was a new post, a video. It was him, in a casino in Las Vegas, laughing as he threw chips onto a table. The caption read, "Work hard, play hard." That was it. That was the breaking point. The sight of him, so careless, so happy, gambling away my future, it shattered the last of my composure. A sob escaped my throat, a raw, guttural sound of pure anguish. The tears came, hot and furious. I cried for the years of work, for the lost dream of my house. I cried for the little girl who just wanted a telescope and got an encyclopedia. I cried for the young woman who believed that if she was good and responsible, she would be valued. I sank to the floor, my body shaking. "Why?" I whispered to the empty room. "Why do I let them do this to me? Why am I always the one who has to pay?" The questions hung in the air, unanswered. But as the tears subsided, something else began to form in the pit of my stomach. It wasn't sadness anymore. It was a cold, hard resolve. A fire. They thought my silence was weakness. They thought my tears meant I had given up. They had counted on me being the good daughter, the one who would eventually forgive and forget. They had made a terrible miscalculation. I got up from the floor, my face streaked with tears, and walked back to my laptop. I didn't search for jobs. I searched for lawyers. Financial fraud attorneys in Dallas. That night, I made a choice. I would not be silent. I would not let them erase me. I would get my life back, and I would use the one thing they never understood: the rules. The lawyer's office was downtown, in a sleek glass building that felt like a world away from my family's suffocating suburban home. His name was Mr. Davies, and he was older, with sharp eyes that seemed to see right through me. I sat across from his large mahogany desk, clutching a folder of documents I had spent the last week gathering. Bank statements, screenshots of Ethan's posts, my pay stubs going back years. I told him the whole story, my voice steady and even. I laid out the facts just as I would chart a patient's symptoms. I expected him to be skeptical. I expected him to tell me it was a family matter, that suing my own parents was a messy, complicated business. Instead, he listened intently, nodding occasionally. When I was finished, he leaned back in his chair and looked at my folder. "May I?" he asked. I pushed it across the desk. He spent 10 minutes silently reviewing the documents. The only sound in the room was the rustle of paper. Finally, he looked up at me. "Miss Carter," he said, his tone serious, "this is not just a family dispute. This is a textbook case of financial exploitation of a vulnerable adult." Vulnerable? The word surprised me. I'm not vulnerable. "Legally, you were," he explained. "They were in a position of trust as joint account holders on an account you opened as a minor. You funded that account exclusively as an adult with your own income. Their withdrawal of the funds for the benefit of a third party, your brother, without your consent, is a clear breach of fiduciary duty. It's theft." Theft. Hearing the words spoken by a legal professional validated everything I felt. It wasn't a loan. It wasn't help. It was theft. "So, I have a case?" I asked, a flicker of hope igniting within me. "You have a very strong case," he confirmed. "We can file a civil suit to recover the funds. We'll demand full restitution." We spent the next hour mapping out a plan. Mr. Davies explained the process, filing the complaint, serving my parents and brother, the discovery phase where we would subpoena their financial records. He warned me it would be emotionally draining. He told me they would fight back, that they would try to paint me as ungrateful and malicious. "Are you prepared for that?" he asked, his gaze steady. I thought about Ethan's smug face. I thought about my mother's excuses and my father's disappointment. I thought about the empty bank account and the life they had stolen from me. "Yes," I said, my voice firm. "I am." Leaving his office that day, I felt a sense of power I hadn't felt in my entire life. I wasn't just reacting anymore. I was acting. My revenge wouldn't be loud or explosive. It would be quiet, methodical, and relentless. It would be a lawsuit. It would be a series of legal documents they couldn't ignore, couldn't excuse, and couldn't make go away. I had spent my life following their rules. Now, I was going to make them follow mine. The lawsuit landed like a bomb in the quiet world of the Carter family. A process server delivered the papers to my parents' front door on a Tuesday afternoon. My mother called me within the hour, her voice a hysterical shriek. "Rachel, what have you done? We got a letter from a lawyer. You're suing us? Your own mother and father?" I kept my voice calm, just as Mr. Davies had advised. "I'm suing to get my money back, Mom. The money you took." "But it's for your brother. It's for family," she sobbed. "You're tearing this family apart over money. How could you be so selfish?" The accusations didn't hurt me anymore. They were just words, the same tired script they had been using my whole life. "I'm not the one who did this," I said quietly. "You did. You and Dad made a choice. Now I'm making mine." I ended the call. My father tried a different tactic. He left a furious, rambling voicemail, calling me an ungrateful child and threatening to write me out of his will. The threat was laughable. What were they going to leave me? More of Ethan's debts? Ethan's reaction was the most predictable. He sent me a string of mocking text messages. "Heard you're suing, LOL. Good luck with that. You'll never win." He posted a new photo on Instagram, a selfie with a caption that read, "Haters gonna hate." But the laughter stopped a few weeks later. As part of the lawsuit, Mr. Davies filed a motion for an injunction to freeze their assets to prevent them from spending or hiding the rest of my money. The court granted it. Suddenly, Ethan's new car was impounded. His bank accounts were frozen. The river of cash had dried up. His panicked call came on a Saturday morning. "Rachel, what the hell did you do?" he yelled into the phone. "They took my car. I can't access my accounts. You have to call this off." "No," I said simply. "My life is ruined because of you. You're jealous. You've always been jealous of me." "This isn't about jealousy, Ethan," I said, my voice cold. "This is about consequences, something you've never had to face." The fallout spread to our extended family. At first, the calls were all in support of my parents. Aunts and uncles called to lecture me about family loyalty and forgiveness. But my lawsuit wasn't a secret tantrum. It was a public record. The details of the case, the $62,000, the sole funding from my nursing salary, the wire transfer to an account linked to Ethan's gambling debts, which Mr. Davies' team had uncovered, started to leak out. The whispers began to change direction. The story of the long-suffering, responsible daughter and the reckless, entitled son started to take root. For the first time, the golden boy looked tarnished. The narrative was no longer under their control. It was mine. The legal battle dragged on for 6 long months. It was just as brutal as Mr. Davies had warned. My parents' lawyer tried to portray me as a vindictive, money-hungry daughter who was trying to extort her loving family. They claimed the money was a gift, a loan I had offered freely. But they had no proof, because it was a lie. We had the proof. We had my decade of work records, my bank statements showing a clear pattern of saving, and their financial records showing a clear pattern of bailing out Ethan. The day we finally met in court for the judgment felt surreal. My parents and Ethan sat on one side of the courtroom, looking pale and defeated. I sat on the other with Mr. Davies. I didn't look at them. I kept my eyes fixed on the judge. When he read his decision, his voice was stern. He methodically dismantled their defense. He spoke of their breach of trust, of their clear financial exploitation, and then he delivered the final verdict. He ruled in my favor. He ordered full restitution of the $62,000 to be paid back through a lien on my parents' house and the liquidation of Ethan's remaining assets, including the car. A gasp went through the courtroom. My mother started to cry. My father stared straight ahead, his face ashen. Ethan just looked small. There was no victory parade for me, no triumphant feeling of winning, just a quiet, profound sense of relief. The weight I had been carrying for so long was finally lifted. It was over. I had won. I had gotten my life back. It took time to get the money, but it came, piece by piece, as the court order was enforced. I didn't celebrate. I just put it back into a new savings account at a new bank with only one name on it, mine. 3 months later, I closed on a small condo in a quiet neighborhood in North Dallas. It wasn't the house with the porch swing I had originally dreamed of, but it was perfect. It was mine. The first night I spent there, I didn't have any furniture except a mattress on the floor, but I felt like the richest person in the world. I sat on the floor, eating pizza out of a box and looking out the window at the city lights. There was a peace in that silence that I had never known. I didn't cut my family off completely, but I built a wall, a high, thick wall with a very small gate. Our conversations are polite, distant, and never, ever about money. My relationship with them is now a scar, a reminder of a wound that has healed, but will never fully disappear. Ethan eventually left town. His reputation was ruined, his credit destroyed. The last I heard, he was working some low-level job in another state. I didn't feel joy at his failure. I didn't feel anything at all. His story was no longer my responsibility. My revenge wasn't in his downfall, but in my own quiet success, in the peace of my own home, bought and paid for by me. Have you ever been used or betrayed financially by the people who should have protected you? Tell me your story in the comments. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more stories of betrayal and justice, because sometimes silence isn't weakness. It's the loudest answer.